Welcome to City and State TV. I'm reporter Serena Trangle. Joining me today is City Councilman James Vacca. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
So I know you wanted to discuss transportation. What's on your mind?
Well, I came out last week in favor of the Move New York plan. I think that we have to do something about traffic congestion in this city. And I know now that that plan is being reviewed, but I wanted to come out early and strongly. We can't live with the current situation we're under, where our central city is basically in gridlock. So I committed to support this plan because it places tolls where they will be helpful in disincentivizing car use. Right now, we have cars that we have tolls rather, that do not disincentivize car use when it pertains to the central city. How does an $8 toll on the Whitestone or Throgs Neck Bridge disincentivize people from coming with their car to the central city? It doesn't. Those tolls, if anything else, really are inappropriate. They're just a way for the TBTA to collect revenue. So rather than just have tolls serve as a revenue producer, I think we have an opportunity to toll where tolls would actually reduce the amount of traffic in the streets. And that's why the Move New York plan was something that I was very interested in. It reduces tolls for bridges like Throgs Neck, Whitestone, Tri-Borough, and even reduces express bus fares. But it does place tolls at 60th Street for those who are entering the core city. So I think it's innovative, and I think it's a plan that deserves serious discussion in the days ahead. I think transportation in our city is very important. I think that we have to be aware of the fact that the MTA will need, in the years ahead, a dependable revenue source for its expense budget obligations, namely service enhancements, and on the capital side for infrastructure. I'm a strap hanger. I take the train down to City Hall most times in the Bronx. The overcrowding has got to be addressed. The service issues on trains and buses have got to be addressed. I was on the 6th line last week, got off 125th Street, coming back from Manhattan to the Bronx, and I was told that the next train was coming in 20 minutes. And the indicator at the station said 20 minutes. That should have been 10 minutes. So rather than saying there's nothing we can do about the traffic, and rather than saying there's nothing we can do about the poor service on our trains and buses, I think now we can do something. I don't want to say that there's nothing we can do. We have to resolve the situation. We have express buses in our city that are non-express buses. They're in the same traffic as my car would be or your car would be. So they're not actually express buses. Well, how do we make them express? There are a lot of ways to make them express, but one way is to get them out of the traffic jam they're in, coming into the city and leaving the city. Express buses are another way for people to leave their cars home, but if they're stuck in the same traffic as cars, then is it really a disincentive for people who may be thinking of taking their car?
You know, how do you reconcile your support or others in the borough's support where people may drive currently and they may not have a viable alternative right now? And as you said, they would be disincentivized to continue this commuting decision they make.
Well, my justification is that we have to look at alternate transportation methods. I believe in ferry service, for example. I think we have to look at the mayor's plan for ferry service and understand that that plan is not a plan in total. It does not address communities such as mine. In Throgs Neck, for example, which is ideal for ferry service, we're not included. I think that we should be. We have to look at dependable mass transit that has a capacity to meet people's needs. If people have better mass transit options, they won't be taking their cars into the central city. So we have to look at ferry service, we have to look at express buses, we have to look at trains and buses. The entire package must be looked at. This plan, the Move New York plan, will produce over $1 billion in revenue. So certainly we're going to have an opportunity to look at the trains, for example. How can we better signalize trains? How can we reduce overcrowding on the east side, for example? I'm on the east side of the Bronx. How do you reduce the three most overcrowded lines in the borough, in the Bronx? 4, 5, 6 are the most overcrowded lines. Now, the Second Avenue subway is part of that solution. And one leg of it will be in operation by 2016. That first leg will service 200,000 people. So I think that there are ways that that money can constructively be used to make sure people who are in the most distant parts of our city are transportation deserts. You go to Staten Island, you go to parts of Queens, you go to parts of the Bronx. We are so distant from the city. Our transportation options are not sufficient. And for those who use their cars, I've used my car to come to the city. You're in traffic for an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes from the Bronx to Manhattan, sitting on the FDR Drive or on the West Side Highway for over an hour in basically a parking lot. I think we can do better as a city. I think our environment demands that we do better. And I think that moving people around our city is very, very important. We can't continue all the toll and fare increases indefinitely either. Right now, with the most recent MTA fare increase, it's going to cost you $8 to go from Whitestone, Queens, to Throgs Neck, Bronx. From Throgs Neck to Bayside on the Throgs Neck Bridge. $8 one way. I think that that's confiscatory. And I think it is ridiculous policy because those large tolls do nothing to resolve the main transportation challenge our city faces, and namely, how do people get to and from work every day in the central city?
Okay. And do you think this plan will be received differently than last time around, and why or why not?
I think it's going to be received differently. I hope it is. Last time the plan, the congestion pricing plan, really had some issues that had to be addressed. But I think that this plan recognizes that we just cannot be establishing tolls. We have to look at reducing fares and tolls on express buses and on bridges that don't lead to the city, the Manhattan, and charging so that we can control traffic in Manhattan. This plan is different. My thrust all these years I've been on the council is that we must do something about gridlock in the central city. And anyone who drives their cars knows that the conditions we're facing. Now, how will this plan be received politically? Where is it going to go politically? Well, only time will tell. I've urged my colleagues to consider this plan. I think many of my colleagues I've spoken to are open to the plan, and I'm sure that this plan will be tweaked and revised should it be, at the end of the day, adopted. But to stand here and say that we should do nothing means that we're not going to be addressing a transportation challenge that we have here in the city of New York. We're the greatest city in the country and the world, but the reality is we have to move business, we have to move people. And I think we can do a much better job than we are now.
Okay. And I know you and others have been engaged in conversations about sort of open data and how it pertains to NYPD statistics. What are your thoughts on what's happening now and how things should or should not change?
Well, as chair of the technology committee, I've been trying to get more agencies involved in open data. This was legislation originally passed by the New York City Council, and many agencies have yet to post the information that the law requires because it is an extensive job ahead of many of the agencies. So I want to work with them cooperatively to do that. I believe whether it's the police department or any other agency, that open data is a resource for you and I, a resource for advocates, a resource for community groups, community boards especially. I was a district manager to a community board for 26 years before I came here to the council. Open data represents that opportunity for community boards to know what complaints are pending in various city agencies, what complaints have been filed, where are there trends borough-wide, where are there trends citywide in complaints that have been addressed or not been addressed. It's a real transparency tool that we could use, and it will enable us better to advocate for the effective delivery of city services and enable us to better monitor citizen complaints. So certainly I think the police department has a role to play, as do many, many other agencies, and we've been working closely on that. I've had oversight hearings and I intend to do more. We've also engaged with training for community boards, which really at the grassroots level, community boards can be so instrumental in making sure that open data is effectively used, that it's an effective tool.
Specifically, I believe the NYPD is supposed to be publishing sector data, sort of breakdowns within precincts, as well as working on eventually publishing statistics for parks and playgrounds that are 1 acre or larger. What's happening with these things?
I think it's coming along. I think it's a work in progress. I know that I would definitely like to see sector information in my precincts. I think that's important because sectors are communities and they relate very locally to people as to what's going on within their neighborhood, their block, and what trends exist. So sectors are also important, by the way, because if there's a robbery or a burglary trend, you can find out exactly where in the precinct is that trend. We have many precincts that are so geographically spread out that it's one thing to get statistics from a precinct, but another thing to get statistics from a sector. In my own community, for example, in one of my community boards, they take in the 45th precinct. But the 45th precinct, if you know the Bronx, is Co-op City, City Island, Pelham Bay, Throgs Neck, Westchester Square. So it's really 3 distinct, geographically cut off communities, cut off by water and highways. So how do we find out that information? Well, it's through an analysis of what's happened in that sector, specifically a sector within the precinct.
So when you say this is an extensive request or ask, what needs to happen?
Oh, I think that we have to have agencies get that information together. We have to have a timetable from them as to when the information will be posted, and I think that we're going to be getting that information posted soon.
Do they need more staff or more resources to, comply with these things?
I think that's up to every commissioner. My job is to make sure that we get compliance. I don't tell commissioners how to run their agencies, but I do make sure that they know that they have to comply with the law and that we need the information ASAP.